Imagine you return to your childhood home in the middle of nowhere. As you navigate through the trees that precede the home, you feel a sense of nostalgic foreboding. There's an uncomfortable energy emanating from your destination. Once inside, you explore the empty house, investigating through diaries of each of your ancestors from countless generations, in turn learning of each of their unusual and horrifying deaths. This is the game we're talking about today. Today, we're talking about What Remains of Edith Finch. The game takes place in the Finch family house, an eccentric and sprawling structure nestled in the lush, misty forests of Washington state. This setting is not just a backdrop but an essential element of the storytelling, reflecting the themes of memory, family, and the inescapability of fate. The Finch house is a labyrinthine structure, an architectural patchwork that mirrors the complexity of the Finch family's history. Each generation has added their own rooms and extensions, resulting in a home that is as much a character in the story as any of the family members. The house is filled with secret passages, hidden rooms, and personal artifacts, creating an immersive environment that invites exploration. This sense of discovery is crucial to the game's narrative, as players uncover the stories of deceased family members through their preserved rooms and belongings. The cluttered, almost chaotic interior of the house contrasts sharply with the serene, natural beauty of the surrounding forest. This juxtaposition enhances the atmosphere of mystery and melancholy. The house stands as a monument to the Finch family's legacy, filled with relics of the past from old photographs to handwritten notes. Each room is a time capsule, meticulously preserved to tell the story of its occupant, who often met a tragic and untimely end. The atmosphere in What Remains of Edith Finch is a masterful blend of melancholy and wonder, crafted through a combination of visual design, sound, and interactive storytelling. The game's art direction uses muted colours and detailed textures to evoke a sense of nostalgia and loss. The Finch house, with its creaking floors and dusty corners, feels both lived in and abandoned, a place where time appears to have stood still. The house, with its many rooms and hidden secrets, symbolises the complexity of family history and the ways in which the past shapes the present. The sense of isolation and entrapment within the house mirrors the Finch family's struggle with their perceived curse, a series of untimely deaths that have plagued them for generations. The game begins with Molly's story. Molly's story is a striking blend of whimsy and darkness, exploring themes of transformation, the fragility of life, and the boundary between reality and imagination. One of the central themes in Molly's chapter is transformation. The story begins with young Molly being sent to bed without supper, prompting her to eat various things around her room out of hunger, such as gerbil food, toothpaste, and holly berries. As she drifts off to sleep, she undergoes a series of fantastical transformations, imagining herself as a cat crawling through the trees, an owl hunting rabbits, a shark hunting seals, and finally, a sea monster hunting people. Each transformation reflects Molly's imaginative and childlike perspective, capturing a sense of wonder and curiosity about the world. These transformations also symbolise the fluidity of identity and the desire for escape. As Molly becomes different creatures, she experiences the world through their eyes, each with its own set of instincts and perceptions. The theme of transformation underscores the game's exploration of identity and the many roles that individuals play throughout their lives. Molly's chapter subtly addresses the fragility of life and the inevitability of death, themes that will permeate through the rest of the game. Her vivid imagination contrasts starkly with the grim reality hinted at by her eventual fate. The consumption of various inedible items, especially the holly berries, is what ultimately leads to her untimely death, making the chapter's whimsical tone all the more poignant. The sequence where Molly imagines herself as a predatory sea monster highlights the thin line between life and death. As the sea monster, she hunts down a sailor, bringing a sense of menace and foreboding to her otherwise playful transformations. This duality of innocence and darkness reflects the game's broader theme of the coexistence of life's beauty and tragedy. The contrast between her youthful perspective and the fatal implications of her actions create a powerful emotional impact. It underscores the idea that even in the midst of innocence, life is precarious and fragile.
We both know I will be delicious.
One of the more memorable stories in What Remains of Edith Finch is Calvin's. Calvin's chapter stands out for its emotional depth and symbolic resonance, shedding light on the broader themes of the game through the lens of a child's dreams and the tragic reality of his ultimately short life. One of the central themes in Calvin's story is ambition. Calvin dreams of becoming an astronaut, symbolising his desire to transcend the ordinary and reach for the stars. This ambition is reflected in his repeated attempts to swing higher and higher on the family's swing set, aiming to complete a full revolution. Calvin's determination to achieve something extraordinary, despite the limitations imposed by his environment, highlights the universal human desire to strive for greatness and push beyond boundaries. Calvin's swing symbolises both freedom and the desire to escape. For Calvin, swinging as high as possible represents a form of liberation, a way to break free from the constraints of everyday life and the physical limitations of his body. This act of swinging, reaching higher and higher, mirrors the freedom and exhilaration of flight, capturing the essence of a child's boundless imagination and yearning for adventure. The swing set becomes a microcosm for Calvin's larger dreams, encapsulating his desire to soar and explore the unknown. The swing itself is a powerful symbol in Calvin's story. It represents the intersection of joy and danger, freedom and confinement. As Calvin swings higher and higher, the swing becomes a metaphor for his aspirations and the inherent risks involved in chasing one's dream. The swing's eventual breaking point serves as a poignant reminder of the delicate balance between ambition and safety, illustrating the perilous edge on which humans' desires often teeter.
The day he made up his mind to fly. And he did.
Hi everyone, this is me. Look how cool I am. Just wanted to take a 15-second break from the video to say that if you're enjoying the video, then please consider taking a look at some of the other videos on the channel. If any look interesting to you, check them out. You'll be doing yourself a favour if you really think about it, and then subscribe while you're there. I would love to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so I'd really appreciate it if you stuck around as long as you enjoy the content. I even have a playlist on the channel for what I think are some of my best videos, so they're easy viewing. Thanks guys, back to the video. The most mysterious story in the game is Barbara's. The chapter, presented in the style of a horror comic book, captures the rise and fall of child star Barbara while exploring the blurred lines between fiction and reality. One of the primary themes in Barbara's story is the transient nature of fame. Barbara was once a celebrated child star known for her scream in horror movies. However, as she grew older, her popularity waned and she struggled to transition into a successful adult career. This decline mirrors the often harsh reality faced by many child actors. Barbara's desperate attempts to reclaim her former glory underscore the emotional toll that the pursuit of fame can take on an individual. The chapter's presentation as a horror comic is more than just a stylistic choice, it emphasises the theme of fear. Barbara's life, both in her films and in her personal story, are steeped in horror. This theme of fear operates on multiple levels. The fear of losing relevance, the fear of being forgotten, and the physical fear she experienced during the events of this chapter. The horror comic format amplifies all these fears, blending Barbara's fictional roles with the real danger that she faces, creating a surreal and unsettling atmosphere. Barbara's chapter also explores the constraints of storytelling, particularly through its presentation as a horror comic. This narrative choice blurs the lines between fiction and reality, suggesting that the stories we tell about ourselves and others can shape perceptions and legacies. The comic book recounts Barbara's final night with a mixture of sensationalism and tragedy, highlighting how her life story is sensationalised and distorted by those who tell it. This theme resonates with the game's larger exploration of how family stories and legends influence personal identity and memory. The chapter is suffused with tragic irony and dark humour. The horror comic format, complete with exaggerated visuals and campy narration, contrasts sharply with the tragic elements of Barbara's story. This juxtaposition creates a sense of tragic irony, where Barbara's life, filled with genuine fear and sadness, is reduced to a sensationalised horror story for profit. The dark humour in the comic, such as the over-the-top horror tropes and dramatic narration, serve to highlight the absurdity of Barbara's situation.
Bravo, man! You are wonderful! We love you!
One of the more ironic and poignant chapters is Walter's. Walter's story is a narrative about a man who spent decades living in a self-imposed exile beneath the Finch house, driven by the trauma of witnessing his sister Barbara's death. Through this chapter, the game explores the psychological impact of trauma and the human struggle between safety and the need for a meaningful life. The predominant theme in Walter's chapter is paranoia and fear, specifically how trauma can shape and control one's life. Walter is profoundly affected by the tragic deaths in his family. His fear of the so-called Finch family curse drives him to retreat into a bunker beneath the home, where he lives in isolation for over 30 years. This fear manifests not only as a response to external threats, but also as an internalized anxiety that prevents him from re-engaging with the world. Walter's prolonged isolation is a key theme that illustrates the depths of his fear. His self-imposed exile is an extreme measure taken to protect himself from what he perceives as an inevitable doom. This isolation, whilst providing a sense of safety, also leads to profound loneliness and a monotonous experience. The bunker, with its confined space and repetitive daily routine, becomes a physical representation of Walter's mental state, trapped and stagnant. The chapter highlights the psychological toll of prolonged isolation and the human need for connection and change. Despite the apparent safety of underground refuge, Walter eventually becomes overwhelmed by the monotony and isolation. His yearning for freedom and change emerges as a powerful tool. This desire is detailed by his decision to break free from the bunker and face the outside world. The act of smashing through the basement wall and emerging into the sunlight represents a courageous step forward towards reclaiming his life and embracing the unknown. Despite this breakthrough, Walter's death is ironic. His initial retreat into the bunker was driven by a desire to escape the curse, yet he ultimately realised that hiding away has not really kept him alive, it has just delayed the inevitable. This theme is illustrated horribly when, after finally mustering the courage to leave the bunker and step out into the open, he is then struck by a passing train. This tragic irony reinforces the game's overarching message about the inescapability of death and the importance of living life fully despite its uncertainties. With the fragility of life being a core component within the ethos of what makes What Remains of Edith Finch work, no story encapsulates this better than Gregory's, as it tells the story of an infant who tragically drowns in the bath. Through the vivid and whimsical lens of a child's imagination, the game explores profound themes in a very troubling manner. One of the central themes in Gregory's chapter is the innocent and boundless imagination of childhood. The narrative unfolds from Gregory's perspective. He's in the bath, he's having a great time, he's imagining a fantastical adventure with his toys coming to life. The toys, all led by this frog that you control, create a magical underwater world where Gregory's imagination reigns supreme. This portrayal highlights the pure, untainted joy and creativity that characterise early childhood. Gregory's innocent perspective turns a mundane environment into a vibrant, playful and enchanting place. Despite the whimsical and playful tone of Gregory's imagined world, the underlying reality of his story is one of profound loss and tragedy. Gregory's death is a heart-wrenching event for the Finch family, particularly for his parents. The juxtaposition of the joyous, imaginative scenes with the tragic reality of what is actually going on, an infant drowning, underscores the devastating impact of such a loss. This chapter perfectly illustrates a theme of life's fragility. The vulnerability of an infant, coupled with the tragic accident that leads to his death, serves as a very stark reminder of how quickly and unexpectedly life can be taken away. The bathtub, a seemingly safe and ordinary place, becomes the site of an unforeseen and irreversible tragedy. This theme is a recurring motif throughout the game, emphasising that life is delicate and precious and that loss can occur in the most ordinary of circumstances. The chapter also touches upon parental grief and guilt, and ultimately touches on the themes of acceptance and memory. Sam's letter to Kay, who are Gregory's parents, indicates a struggle to come to terms with Gregory's death, but also a desire to remember the joy and innocence of Gregory's short life. And now for the best chapter in the whole game. Hell, one of the best chapters in any game. Lewis's chapter is one of the best arguments we have for video games being seen as art. Through Lewis's story, the game offers a profound exploration of how individuals cope with dissatisfaction and seek meaning in their lives. A central theme in Lewis's chapter is escapism. Working a monotonous job at a fish cannery, Lewis slowly begins to escape into an elaborate fantasy world of his own creation. This fantasy becomes increasingly vivid and complex, serving as a refuge from the dull, repetitive nature of his daily life. The contrast between the bleak reality of the cannery and the vibrant landscapes of his fantasy highlight the human desire to seek solace and excitement in the realm of imagination in moments when life becomes unbearable. This section addresses themes of mental health and disassociation. Lewis's retreat into his fantasy world can be seen as a coping mechanism for dealing with his depression and dissatisfaction with life. In fact, this story is actually told from the perspective of Lewis's therapist. However, as his fantasy becomes more consuming, it also indicates a dangerous level of disassociation from reality. Lewis's growing preference for his imagined kingdom over his real life reflects the struggles forced by individuals dealing with severe mental health issues, where the line between reality and fantasy can often blur, leading to devastating consequences as it does here. Lewis's story highlights the oppressive nature for monotony and the human need for purpose and meaning. The repetitive tasks at the cannery symbolise the drudgery of an unfulfilling life, pushing Lewis to seek meaning elsewhere. People need purpose, adventure, and a sense of accomplishment. This search for meaning is a fundamental human drive, and its absence can lead to deep existential despair. The tension between reality and fantasy is what propels Lewis's chapter forward. As his fantasy world becomes more elaborate, Lewis finds it increasingly difficult to distinguish between the two. The game masterfully blends these two worlds in gameplay, requiring the player to navigate both simultaneously. This duality illustrates the seductive nature of fantasy and the potential dangers of losing oneself in an idealised alternate reality. The tragic outcome of Lewis's story serves as a stark reminder of the importance of maintaining a connection with reality, even when it is painful or unfulfilling. The method of which this is done through gameplay is incredible, having the player perform the same mundane tasks over and over again to progress the story. You just cut the heads off the fish and throw them forward yourself. You do this for a long time, for so long in fact that you begin to do it subconsciously, putting zero thought into what your hands are doing. Instead, you are focused on the fantastical adventure transpiring on the other side of the screen. The further into the adventure you go, the more of the screen it takes up, until you can no longer even see the fish. Much like Lewis, you have pushed the real world to the back burner. Your focus is solely on the imaginative world, losing yourself in this magical place until...
And the rest I think you know. Mrs. Finch, your son was a kind man who will be missed by all of us who knew.
I haven't explained every single chapter in this game because we would be here all day, but all of this brings us back to Edith Finch. It is revealed that Edith is in fact pregnant, and it is then revealed at the very end of the game that Edith died in childbirth. This is the culmination of everything the game had to say. Edith is the latest victim of the Finch family curse, which seemingly dooms each member to a premature death. Her demise underscores the inevitability of fate and the inability of the family to escape its tragic history. Edith's death represents the end of her quest to uncover the truth about her family's history. Despite her tragic end, her efforts allow her son to piece together the family's story and find closure. This theme highlights the importance of confronting the past and finding resolution, even in the face of adversity. Edith states that she wanted her child to know where they came from, to know of all that came before them. Familial legacy, for better or for cursed, is a core foundation of who we are. Edith's death serves as a poignant conclusion to the game's exploration of family, fate, and the human experience. What Remains of Edith Finch is a unique game. There are hundreds of walking simulators out there, and there are quite a lot of good ones, but absolutely none of them can hold a candle to What Remains of Edith Finch. This game is a piece of art, and it is an essential experience that everybody with an interest in video games should play at least once. Speaking of which, a few weeks ago, I actually did make a video where I listed 10 games that everybody needs to play before they die. This is obviously one of them, but do make sure to check that video out to see the other 9. But for now, that is all from me. If you enjoyed the video, then please consider leaving a like, as that would greatly help me out. And if you want to see more videos from me, I upload every single week, but for now, that is all. Have a nice day, and good